London's best defence against flooding, the Thames Barrier built to protect the UK capital and the communities along the Thames estuary. Climate experts predict that Britain will experience changing weather patterns in the future, in part from climate change. Copenhagen failed to reach a legally binding treaty to tackle the problem. The UN want to have one in place by the end of next year. Malcolm Ferguson works for the public body in the UK, which aims to protect the environment.
If we don't get that deal and emissions continue to rise through the next decade, then actually we're going to be in even worse trouble. We could be looking at 3 degrees or 4 degrees. That may not sound like a lot, but it would be absolutely catastrophic for some parts of the world, and it would be very, very difficult to deal with, even in countries such as the UK.
I now declare the meeting closed.
Despite years of planning and nearly 2 weeks of debate, Copenhagen came up with very little. In the end, only the US and the world's emerging economies brokered a deal which fell far short of what many people had hoped for. One of the main aims of the summit was to set concrete emissions targets. That didn't happen. But by the end of January, the UN wants nations to report back on what individual targets they intend to set. Less than a quarter of countries formally backed the deal. Now the UN is calling for all states to sign up, saying it will help build momentum for a future deal. And the UN says it plans to streamline the negotiating process in time for the Mexico Climate Conference at the end of 2010. China, one of the world's biggest polluters, has dismissed accusations it vetoed a more substantial deal. Delegates are due to meet again in June to discuss emissions targets, but it's unclear whether Beijing will be more forthcoming.
My concern really is that from what we saw at Copenhagen, China doesn't have a lot of interest in a legally binding agreement, and this may prove to be one of the big diplomatic obstacles of 2010.
The UN called the Copenhagen Accord an essential beginning. The fear is, by the end of next year, positions won't have changed. And despite a further 12 months of negotiation, the divisions expressed in Denmark will still exist. Emma Hayward, Al Jazeera, London.